The Great Smog of London, often referred to as the killer fog of 1952, was not just a weather event. It was a disaster that revealed the serious consequences of industrial pollution and prompted sweeping changes in environmental policy. For 5 days, from December 5 to December 9, 1952, the city of London was shrouded in a thick, toxic fog that brought the metropolis to a near standstill, leaving behind a trail of death, illness, and public outrage. The smog, however, did more than just obscure visibility. It marked a turning point in how the world understood and dealt with air pollution. A history of London's smog problem. The phenomenon of London fogs wasn't a new occurrence by the time the Great Smog hit in 1952. In fact, pea soup fogs, named for their dense, yellow appearance, had been a long-standing feature of the city's atmosphere, dating back to the 13th century. London's residents had grown accustomed to these fogs, which were primarily caused by coal burning. Over the centuries, coal became a major source of heating, power, and industry. The thick fogs were seen as an inevitable part of life, particularly during the colder months when the demand for coal skyrocketed. The 19th century brought about a significant change as the Industrial Revolution saw London grow into one of the largest metropolises in the world. Along with industrial growth came severe air pollution, which led to the creation of smog, a term coined in 1905 by a Londoner to describe the toxic blend of smoke and fog that plagued the city. Despite the recognition of smog as a public health hazard, little was done to curb it, as the economic boom fueled by industry made coal burning indispensable. Dickens and other literary figures famously described London's foggy streets, creating a pervasive image of a city constantly enveloped in darkness, both literal and figurative. By the early 20th century, industrialization had made the situation worse. Factories were churning out goods at an ever-increasing pace, and residential coal fires added to the thick clouds of pollution hanging over the city. As these pollutants built up, people began to notice the severe impact on health, particularly respiratory diseases. Even so, little action was taken until the 1950s, when the city's smog problem reached its deadly peak. The day the smog turned deadly. On December 5, 1952, the weather in London took a dangerous turn. An anticyclone, a high-pressure weather system, settled over the city, trapping cold air beneath a layer of warmer air. This created a perfect storm for smog formation. Factory emissions, car exhaust, and the smoke from coal fires were unable to rise and disperse. Instead, they lingered close to the ground, mixing with the moisture in the air and creating a dense, opaque fog that covered London. What made this particular smog so deadly was not just its severity, but its duration. It didn't dissipate in a day or two like many previous fogs. It hung around for 5 days, bringing daily life to a halt. Visibility was so poor that people were unable to see more than a few feet in front of them. Some pedestrians couldn't even see their own feet. The usual hustle and bustle of London was replaced by a suffocating silence, broken only by the sounds of honking horns and the occasional cough or wheeze of a passerby. Public transportation ground to a halt. The iconic London Underground was one of the few forms of transportation that continued to operate, though its own system was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of people. People abandoned their cars in the streets, unable to navigate through the thick smog. Streetlights became almost useless as the fog rendered them invisible from a few meters away. Indoor activities also came to a standstill. Theaters, cinemas, and concert halls were forced to cancel performances as audiences couldn't see the stage. Crime rates spiked as the reduced visibility made it easier for criminals to operate under cover of fog. But the most harrowing consequence was the increase in deaths and illnesses caused by the smog. The devastating health effects. The smog's toxic effects were most felt in the form of respiratory illnesses. Pneumonia, bronchitis, and other lung-related diseases saw a sharp increase in hospitalizations. The elderly and children, as well as people with pre-existing health conditions, were particularly vulnerable. Estimates suggest that around 4,000 people died during the smog's duration, though modern estimates place the number closer to 12,000, as the long-term effects of the pollution contributed to premature deaths in the years that followed. Animals were not spared either. Reports surfaced of livestock in the Smithfield market choking to death from the contaminated air. The smog was so severe that it suffocated everything in its path, leaving the city reeling from the devastation. The public outcry and the path to change. In the immediate aftermath of the Great Smog, the British public was shaken to the core. What had once been a seasonal nuisance had now proven to be a life-threatening disaster. It became clear that the air pollution problem in London could no longer be ignored, and the smog had a lasting impact on the way the government and the public approached environmental policy. The smog prompted a slow but inevitable political response. In 1956, just 4 years after the event, the British government passed the Clean Air Act, which marked a monumental shift in environmental policy. The act was designed to reduce smoke pollution by establishing smoke-free zones in the city and limiting the use of coal in homes and industrial settings. In addition, homeowners were encouraged to switch to cleaner heating methods, such as natural gas and electricity. The Clean Air Act is widely seen as a turning point in the history of environmentalism. It was one of the first pieces of legislation to directly address the dangers of air pollution, and it set the stage for similar environmental policies in other parts of the world. While the effects of the Great Smog were long-lasting, the act helped usher in a cleaner, healthier London, and in many ways began the environmental movement that we know today. The legacy of the Great Smog. The Great Smog of 1952 did not only change the way Londoners lived. It changed the way the world viewed environmentalism and the importance of air quality. The tragedy highlighted the deadly consequences of unchecked industrialization and the need for urgent action to safeguard public health and the environment. Today, we live in an era where air pollution continues to be a major global concern. Cities across the world are grappling with the harmful effects of industrial emissions, vehicle exhaust, and the burning of fossil fuels. However, the lessons learned from the Great Smog have played a crucial role in the development of air quality regulations and the push for cleaner, renewable energy sources. While the problem is far from solved, the Great Smog of London serves as a powerful reminder of the cost of inaction and the need to protect the air we breathe. The fight for clean air. The Great Smog of London is more than just a dark chapter in the city's history. It is a lesson in the importance of clean air and sustainable industrial practices. It took the loss of thousands of lives and widespread suffering for the government to take meaningful action, but the resulting Clean Air Act became a landmark in environmental policy. In many ways, the smog that descended on London in 1952 set the stage for future environmental movements and made it clear that pollution was not just a problem for the future, it was a crisis in the present. The smog not only changed the way we think about air quality, but also gave rise to a global conversation about sustainability and environmental responsibility. As we continue to face the challenges of climate change and urbanization, the lessons of the Great Smog are more relevant than ever. We must continue to push for cleaner air, stricter regulations, and sustainable practices to ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. The Great Smog of London was a wake-up call, a reminder that the fight for clean air is a fight for our health, our environment, and our future. Well, that's a wrap on one of the most breathtakingly intense pollution events in history, the Great Smog of London. I hope you found this deep dive into one of the deadliest fogs ever as eye-opening as I did. Can you imagine a time when something as simple as breathing was a life or death gamble? If you enjoyed learning about this historical environmental disaster, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe.